One of my favorite things to do in Ableton Live, and even more than that, one of my favorite things to demo for people if I'm teaching a class, doing a one-on-one session, is showing how easy it is to sync Ableton Live sessions. Now, I've walked through this entire setup showing how to do this over a network before, and I've linked to that in the description. Let me show you what I'm talking about though. So I've got both of my Ableton sessions loaded up here. They have the same exact Ableton set. This is what I mean by that. I can press play. You could see both of these are moving at the same time. I can jump ahead later in the set. Let's go to song 4 and you'll see both of these jump to song 4. I can jump to song 3 if I want to, and it jumps to song 3. Again, it's really, really cool. And you can probably already now start to imagine the possibilities here. Syncing up multiple Ableton sessions, having key sounds on one, having tracks on the other. There's tons of possibilities. But not too long ago, Joshua reached out and brought up a problem that I have never experienced before. And he said, hey, Will, I've got this weird issue, this weird problem where I'm using Ableton Live and I'm syncing it between multiple machines. And I'm running in this issue to where when I get to about 1,025 bars, Ableton on the second machine resets. And I thought, well, what is Joshua talking about? I've never seen that before. So I did what all of us naturally do. I got on Google and I discovered this seems to be a known issue. And because I instantly and instantaneously trust everything I find on the internet, as I dug in here, I realized that it's an issue, and Ableton actually mentions this, with the song position pointer. It says song position pointer messages have a maximum resolution of 1024. That's why the slave computer, or the follower computer, will start at bar 1 when the master starts at 1025. There's no way to avoid this, at least when using MIDI clock sync. So let me demo exactly what's happening here. The reason I had never experienced this, and the reason when Josh reached out, I thought, oh, silly Josh, he's crazy, is most of my sets typically aren't that long. And I'm typically, when I'm syncing computers together, multiple sets together, I'm not doing it in the same context where I would run into this issue. So let me show you what's happening. Again, everything worked great when it was before and early on in my set, but the later on in my set I get, so let's go to song 6 here. Let's press play. You'll see both of these jump 801, same exact place. We're in the right place here. But the later on I get in my set, let's jump here. This is 969. Look at our B computer. In fact, let me show you even better. My B computer is at measure 26. So what I started to see as I was kind of experimenting here and trying to recreate what Josh was experiencing was the later I get into my set, if I have a lot of songs, it didn't even take me to measure 1025 to experience this issue. The later I got in my set, the more I would have weird issues. I'd have odd issues to where, again, I would jump to song 7 and my live set would jump back to 0. My follower machine, slave machine, would jump back to 0. And again, the reason is because of an issue with the song position pointer. And then you see that mentioned on that Ableton forum article, which I was showing you earlier. So I started thinking about this, if there's really no way to solve this, because there's an issue inherently with that system with doing MIDI clock sync. You run out of numbers essentially at that point. What's our way around it? And I really came down to 2 approaches, and it comes, the solution to this problem comes down to what you're using this feature for in the first place. Let's start for the very beginning. If you're using this feature to sync multiple Ableton machines, so take 2 Ableton computers that are running the exact same Ableton session. And if your goal with that is to create a redundant setup so that, again, when I press play, let's go to song 4 here, and I press play, then on my B computer, song 4 happens as well too. If you're trying to do this with redundancy, I would suggest you stop. And here's the reason why. For a couple reasons. One, we have that issue if we have a set that's big enough. And this particular set I'm looking at here is one that breaks this, right? We go way past 1024. 1,024 measures. We go way past that. And so I'm going to run into that song position pointer issue. But the other issue I'm going to run into that makes this not great for redundancy is this. Again, let's zoom in. I want you to kind of see this happen in action. The goal of redundancy is so that if my A computer goes down and stops playing, then my B computer is going to keep going. Okay. So A computer's on the left that you're seeing, B computer's on the right. Well, watch what happens. If I press stop on my A computer, or my A computer suddenly stops working, guess what happens to my B computer? It stops. So this inherently is not a great solution if we're doing redundancy. So my first solution, my first alternative, maybe is a better way to say, to solving the song position pointer of sets that go over 1024 measures, 1024 measures, and you're trying to do sync, is to do redundancy. And if you're using this to try to do redundancy using a Play Audio 12. So I've got my Play Audio 12 sitting here. The goal with this interface, the beauty of this interface, is I actually have this interface connected to both of my computers. My desk is a little messy now, but what I've got this plugged into my first computer here, my Mac Mini, and then this is plugged into my B computer. And into the front of this interface, I connected my Oak Board Mini. This is my go-to playback controller that I really, really like. And so what I've got is I've got play, stop, previous, and next mapped. And so let me show you how I set this up and how I'm making this happen. First, let's go to our main machine. I'm going to go to preferences, and I'll show you under link tempo MIDI, under the input for Play Audio 12.1, host 1, I've enabled remote. Okay. If I take you to my B computer here, same exact thing on the input of my Play Audio 12 here for MIDI, I've enabled remote. And then what I went through and did is I MIDI mapped both of my computers. So they'll show you both of these machines. Both of them are MIDI mapped. And let's close this window and show you what we have here. Both are MIDI mapped so that, again, using play, using stop, previous, and next, these 4 buttons control both of these machines at the same time. Now, the benefit of this is I can press stop, and I'll show you over here on my MIDI controller. We'll press stop to stop this, and it's going to stop both of my computers, okay? If I press play, then it's going to play both of my computers. And by doing that, then I can navigate and jump around in my live set, skip to another song here, go back to a song, press play, and it's going to go, press stop, and it's going to stop. If you're looking and you are trying to use this MIDI sync stuff for the sake of redundancy, this is my preferred method to do this. You can get redundancy through the Play Audio 12. Obviously, you get the ability to switch over to Scene B as well too and have a separate set of outputs. So you really have everything you need in one box, right? With the Play Audio 12 configured already, which is great. But the other nice thing about this is all Ableton Live is seeing, because I'm not syncing my playback sessions together, because I'm not sending MIDI clock from machine A to machine B. All I'm doing is sending MIDI again from my MIDI controller. The same MIDI message is going to both computers. I'm jumping between songs, previous and next. I should mention too, if you have a MIDI controller like PreSonus Atom, Ableton Push, something that has a lot of buttons, you could actually go so far as to map all your songs on your MIDI controller so that instead of just previous and next and navigating your set list that way, let's say we say, okay, song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4. Like that's an option as well too. And what's great about that solution is you can have an endless amount of songs, have them in both machines. And when you press play, again, it's going to play both machines, and we're not dealing with the issue of over 1024 measures. And the reason we're not dealing with it is because we're just pressing play. We're not doing MIDI clock. We don't have to deal with song position pointer messages from one machine to the next. So a alternative solution, if you run into this issue of syncing your Ableton machines together and your goal is to try to do redundancy, don't do this using MIDI clock sync, but instead do this using a Play Audio 12 and a MIDI controller. Okay, so that's our first scenario. Now I'm going to open up another live session here because I want to talk about another potential scenario that I think you may be trying to use this technology and this technique for. And in that scenario, let me open another live set here, then I'll show you what I'm talking about. In that particular scenario, you have one computer that has your main session. So just similar to what we've seen before, we've got our main computer here, and let me wait for this to load, and then I'll share my screen and show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, so this computer, my main computer, A computer, has all my stems, has everything loaded in. We're ready to go. But then on my B computer, you'll see that it looks similar, but it looks different. This has my entire session, but it's missing stems. But what it does have is now it has this keys track where I've laid out all my individual keys presets so that as I go through and do my MIDI clock sync, right, we can do the same thing. Let's enable EXT on this computer, and I'll show you both of these side by side. We can click 2, we can press play, and we jump to song 2. And you can see as our main tracks computer goes by, it's going to change our keys presets here. And let me actually zoom in so you can see it's changing our keys presets. Now, that's using chain selector, that's using MIDI clips to pull up chain selector. I'll also link to previous tutorial showing you how I do that. And that's a really great use of this technique of a way to do this. But again, if your set is bigger than and it maxes out that 1024 song position pointer issue, then you're not going to be able to do this, right? And I believe Joshua is doing something similar to this. He's not trying to do redundancy when he first reached out. He was trying to have his tracks computer synced up with his keys computer and trigger different presets. So two ways around that. One, do what I showed you earlier where you use a Play Audio 12 and just press play and trigger your content here instead of trying to keep them perfectly in sync. Just trigger your song, press play, and you're good to go. And that works perfectly fine, but I want to show you an alternative. And I, unfortunately or fortunately, come from a long line of overcomplicators. So we have a long family history of overcomplicating things. And so maybe go with the Play Audio 12 solution, but I think this solution is pretty cool as well too. So here's what I'm going to do. Instead of treating this computer here as the same exact session with all of these loaded in, instead of doing that, what I'm going to actually do is just keep my computer over in session view. And I'm basically going to think about my computer in session view as if it's a keyboard that's just sitting off to the side of the stage that I want to send preset changes to it, not program changes, but preset changes to that to pull up different presets. So what I essentially want to do is I want to keep this main computer A over here in arrangement view because I'm running tracks. It's a linear process. Everything's great. And then I want to keep my B computer over here in session view. And I want to run it as if it's essentially just a keys rig. And actually, because I'm doing it in this way, I can even go as far as to delete all this extra content. So I get my key sounds loaded in. I'm using, again, chain selector to load key sounds into keys 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's as far as we'll go for today. And then what I want to do is use these presets, these MIDI clips here, to actually play my key sounds. But again, I really like that ability to lay them into my arrangement view session and have them change. But here's the difference. Instead of making my B computer also be in arrangement view, again, I'm going to leave my B computer here in session view, and we're going to go over into our A computer. And let me show you this full screen so you can see it a little easier. And I've got a similar keys track here. And on my A machine, instead of loading in presets, what I've got is I've just got some MIDI clips here. There's no instrument rack here. You see it actually says drop an instrument or sample here. I've got nothing loaded in. I've just got MIDI clips, but these MIDI clips match, if you look at our B computer, they match essentially what's loaded into our B computer. Okay. So A computer has tracks and everything, and it has just dummy MIDI clips. And our B computer has both our dummy MIDI clips, or it has our MIDI clips, and it has the sounds that are pulling it up. And again, I've linked to a separate tutorial showing you how to do chain selector. The template I'm actually using for this, if you're interested, I'll link this up, is the Massive Keys template. It's available for purchase. It doesn't have sounds. It's just the foundational bits that you can use. So you can purchase that a la carte, or you can download it for free as a From Studio to Stage student. I'll link that up as well too, but that's not the point of this tutorial. Okay. So let's get back to this. So let's go to our main computer here, and I'll show you what I've got going on here. So instead of these presets pulling up chain selectors, and particular chains in a chain selector, they each have MIDI notes. So I started key 0 here with a MIDI note. Keys 1, I've got a MIDI note. Keys 2 has a MIDI note. Keys 3, a different MIDI note, and keys 4. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to use network MIDI, my network MIDI session that I created before. And I'm going to make sure MIDI from computer 1 is set to network MIDI network here. You can actually see it's not showing up right now. So let's make some changes to our configuration. So I'm going to go to Live's Preferences, Command, comma. I jokingly tell From Studio Stage students, I probably spend 75% of my life saying command, comma, and in this preference pane, because I'm constantly changing and tweaking my configuration. And this is like the #1 place that I hang out. But here we go. Anyway, let's keep going. I'm going to go to Link Tempo MIDI. This time I'm going to use network MIDI. Instead of input here, we're going to go to output. And we'll say out network MIDI, and I'm going to disable sync because I don't need that. And I'm going to enable track. And essentially what that means with that enabled there is I want to be able to send MIDI out of my tracks in Ableton Live to my network MIDI session. Again, I'm not going to show you how to set that up in this video because I have done that multiple times, and I've linked a tutorial showing you how to do that. But I've set it up to where I can get MIDI out of my tracks, send MIDI from Live's tracks to my network MIDI session. So now on this track, we're going to do MIDI to network, MIDI network. Okay, so that's just the name of the MIDI network there. And with that, essentially what that means is I'm going to send these MIDI notes out to my MIDI network. Now let's go over to our other computer, our B computer. We have to do a little bit of change here. First, we're going to disable external. So up here in this upper left-hand corner. And again, if you're unfamiliar with why that was enabled, check out the video where I show you how to sync multiple machines together. But I'm going to disable that for now. And then if you have to guess where we're going to go, as my grandmother would say, I'll give you 3 guesses and the first 2 don't count. Command, comma, we're going to go to link tempo MIDI. This time we're going to deal with the input. And the input for network sync, which is the name of that MIDI network, we're going to disable sync and we're going to enable remote. Now, essentially what we're doing is we're taking machine A, we're taking our main machine, our leader machine, master machine, and we're saying we want to send MIDI notes out of that machine to our secondary machine, secondary Ableton computer. And we're essentially treating that as if it's a synthesizer. And we want to send MIDI notes to trigger clips on our B machine. So the first thing we need to do is MIDI map. And I've already MIDI mapped these notes, but I'll MIDI map the first one again to show you. And what we're going to do is we're going to do Command M to MIDI map. And we want to MIDI map each one of these clips, eventually all of them, to those MIDI notes. Now you can see I already did this for these, but let's go ahead and delete this one so we can redo this. And let me show you, let's go into, let you see both of these machines so you can see this happen. On this machine, I'm going to do nothing different. On my A machine, I'm going to trigger this clip here, key 0. But on my B computer, I'm going to zoom in so that you can see this. I'm in MIDI map mode, so Command M or Control M if you're on a PC. And I'm going to click key 0, okay, because that's the clip I want to map to. And then I'm going to click this key 0 clip up here to play it. Okay, you see that MIDI note plays. Then I'll get out of MIDI map mode here, and I'll stop my A machine. We can zoom out. We can see this, and then we'll stop this computer as well too. And so what that essentially means now is each one of my clips over on my A computer, each one of these key 0, keys 1, 2, 3, and 4 have all been mapped to my B computer, key 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now what that means and what that allows me to do is go into my main machine and lay out MIDI clips in arrangement view as if it was going to change presets. So if you've seen me do the chain selector thing before, and if you haven't, again, check out the link. I know I keep saying this, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Check out the link in the description of this video where I show you how to use chain selector. I'm going to act as if I'm using chain selector, even though all I'm using is a MIDI note. Okay. This is a similar process too if you're using MIDI notes to control Pro Presenter, using MIDI notes to trigger video clips in Resolume, using MIDI notes to trigger lights or video somewhere else. We're doing the same thing. It's just the thing we're triggering is an additional Ableton computer. So let's start with this key 0 preset here. And actually my preferred method for navigating this, let's go to song 1. We're going to disable back to arrangement view here. We'll go to song 1. To make this easier to navigate, I'm going to go to Live's browser, and I've already got the set that I have opened up. So I enabled this keys track here, and I've got this pulled up so it makes it super, super easy to look at these different clips here and drag them into my live set. So let's say key 0, we want to drag this down here. And again, I have no sounds associated with this. I just have MIDI notes. So we'll do key 0 there. Let's do keys 1, keys 2. And we're going to get super creative, as you probably guessed. We'll do keys 3. And then if you had to guess what we're doing next, I bet you would guess this. We're doing keys 4. Now what's cool is I can repeat those sounds for this song here. But let's do it in a different order. So we'll do keys 4 this time. Drop that there. We'll do keys 2. Drop that here. We'll do key 0. Let's say we want to mute for some reason. And then keys 1. Okay, so the way I'm programming this in that set is I'm essentially treating it as if I was doing using MIDI clips to call up chain selector presets. But instead of that, I'm using MIDI clips with MIDI notes that are MIDI mapped to my B computer to then trigger those presets. And the reason I'm doing this, one, this is actually my preferred method to run keys, do all my key stuff in session view and treat it this way. And I think the main reason is it just functions a little more like a keyboard as opposed to being like stuck to a linear timeline. I can just kind of see presets here. I can add them in. I don't have to think about what order they're going to be, and I just add them in. But then I can stay in arrangement view for all my tracks, all my programming. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's see what happens here. So even if our set like this one goes way beyond 1024, 1024 measures, we're still good because we're not syncing both of our computers together. We are just syncing up MIDI clips. So let's go to this computer on our A machine, and I'll zoom in here so you can see the MIDI clips, and then we'll zoom in on our B machine here so that you can see these MIDI clips getting chosen. So let's go back a little further. We'll go to key 0. You'll see that gets triggered via MIDI. Okay, and then we're going to get into song 1 here, and we're coming up on keys 1, which will happen right now, right? And you see that preset triggers. And then we'll jump ahead to keys 2, and I'll fast forward us here in a second so we don't have to watch this whole thing. Here comes keys 2 right now. And then as you guessed it, we'll do keys 3 and keys 4. There's 3, and then finally 4 is coming up. Okay, there's keys 4. Now, what's cool about this is let's jump ahead. Actually, keys 4 looked like that didn't trigger. Maybe I stopped it before it went. Keys 4. Yeah, that one didn't trigger. Let's do some troubleshooting here. This is fun. Live in the moment. There's our MIDI clip. Let's go to keys 4. Oh, keys 4 didn't trigger because it's not mapped. There we go. That's why. So I've got a MIDI note in there, but I actually didn't map it to keys 4. So let's do this live in the moment. Just for consistency's sake, we'll trigger that. Boom. There you go. Knocked it out. So the other thing I want to show you is, and I know I beat this horse to death, but I want to just copy these MIDI clips to show you, again, things don't get weird when I get to like all the way to the end of my set here. My final song, if I had these same MIDI clips loaded in here, it's going to function exactly the same way. So watch both of these machines. So there's keys 1. For the sake of time, let's jump ahead to keys 2. Here comes keys 2 right there. And sake of time, we'll jump to keys 3, right? And then there's keys 4. The other thing that's cool about this, I'll show you another nice approach about this. Let's say, or another reason why we might want to consider this, let's add a locator in for verse 1 and then chorus 1 here. What's cool is I can still jump around. One of my favorite things about arrangement view is I can navigate my set easily. So I could jump to locator 1. And when I jump to locator 1, it's also going to pull up in a bar because we're waiting for global quantization. It's going to pull up the corresponding keys preset, which is keys 3. And then it's going to keep running, and it's keys 4. And then let's jump ahead to locator 2, which is going to be keys 2. And that pulls up our keys 2 sound. So this doesn't just solve the 1024 measure issue in Ableton Live with our song position pointer. But it allows us to do some other really cool things. But the thing that I like about this approach is if you were using network sync, and if you were syncing multiple Ableton machines together, and you were doing that so that you could sync your keys presets up and have them run in time with your tracks, then this is a really great solution to allow you to do a similar thing. And what's really nice is on your tracks machine, you have no key sound loaded into your computer. So it's going to keep your CPU really low there. And on your keys computer, you have no tracks loaded in. You have no linear thing that you have to deal with. So you don't have to deal with that song position pointer. So it's really good on your CPU. And it also, again, allows you to get past that 1024 method. So there's a couple different approaches. I know this is a long video, but there's a couple different approaches to how to work around the 1024 measure song position pointer issue in Ableton Live. If you have a question you want me to answer in a future video, it doesn't have to be a 20-minute long response to your question, but if you have a question no matter how big or small, then send me an email to questions@fromstudiotostage.com. You can send me an email to questions@fromstudiotostage.com. And if it makes sense, we'll include it in a future video. If it's easy enough for me to reply to, I'll do my best to reply there in that moment. And then also, if you're struggling with an issue you just can't seem to solve or figure out, then I would love to connect with you over Zoom. You can connect for a 15-minute call. I've included a link to book that. And you can book a session, whatever time works best for you. You can see my availability and choose something that works best for you for 15 minutes or for an hour-long session. And once you do your session, you get a video that's recorded that you can keep. We'll walk through everything step by step, make sure you understand it. And the final piece about that is if you are From Studio to Stage subscriber and student, then you get 50% off of one-on-one sessions. So if you do an hour-long session, you get that for 50% off the standard rate, which is really, really great. So it's an extra special thing for From Studio video to stage students. Now, again, as I mentioned in this video, there's a lot of links, a lot of things that I mentioned. Check out the description of this video to see that. Thanks so much for checking this video out. We'll see you next week, 10 a.m. Central, for our next tutorial. Take care, everybody. Bye.